Hello and welcome to episode number 556 of Smart Podcast Trashy Books. I'm Sarah Wendell, and joining me today is Olivia Waite. We are going to talk about her New York Times romance column and her best of coverage for 2022. We also talk about writing about grief, writing her column, and what's next. We also take a side trip into discussing the emotionally intense books that are popular now and the similar properties that had an emotional hold on us when we were younger. This is an episode that I held on to due to the HarperCollins strike earlier this year. I've actually edited this episode twice. I did it once to remove the HarperCollins titles and then again to put them back. So if you're thinking, wait a minute, it's March 2023. Why are you talking about year-end coverage? Well, as I often say, any book you haven't read is a new book. So hold on to your TBRs because we have got some recommendations. I also have a compliment, which makes me so happy. To Emily K. Did you know that beneath the soil, trees grow as wide and as far out as the branches that we can see above ground? It's true. And there is a tree near where you live that likes you so much, it has spelled out your name with its roots. If you have supported the show with a monthly pledge of any amount, thank you. You are helping me ensure that each episode is transcribed. Hi, Garlic Knitter. You keep me going each and every week, and you're making sure that the show is accessible to everyone. And, well, you keep us going, so thank you. If you would like to join the Patreon community, please have a look at patreon.com/smartbitches. Monthly pledges start at $1 a month, and Patreon members get bonus episodes, a wonderful Discord, which we actually talk about in this episode, and many, many more things. So please have a look. And a special hello to Kier, who is a new member of the community. This episode is brought to you in part by Lumi Deodorant. Lumi Deodorant is a uniquely formulated pH-balanced deodorant that was developed by an OBGYN. It's aluminum-free, skin-safe, and clinically proven to control odor anywhere on your body for up to 72 hours. And heads up, new customers get $5 off Lumi's starter pack with code SARAH at lumideodorant.com. Now, I have started paying a lot more attention to what the ingredients are in my deodorant, and I really like Lumi. And not only do I like Lumi, but my teenagers do as well. One has taken the deodorant wipes for school for after gym class, and the report back is, these are so great and they don't smell weird. Lumi actually comes in a few choices of scent: clean tangerine, toasted coconut, and lavender sage. It's the first of its kind, too. It was designed to be safe to use anywhere on your body, including your feet. How does it work? Well, some products will try to mask odor with a fragrance, but Lumi is formulated and powered by mandelic acid to stop odor before it starts. It's like a pre-odorant. And Lumi's starter pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice, like a mini body wash and deodorant wipes, and free shipping. As a special offer for listeners, new customers get $5 off a Lumi starter pack with code SARAH at lumideodorant.com. That equates to over 40% off your starter pack when you visit Lumi Deodorant, Lume, and use code SARAH. All right, shall we get started with all of the books that we've ever wanted to talk about ever? Yes, let's do it. On with my conversation with Olivia Waite.
Hi, everyone. I'm Olivia Waite. I write queer historical romance, science fiction, and fantasy. I'm also the romance fiction columnist for the New York Times Book Review, which is extremely fun, and especially this year, because this year, for the first time ever, the New York Times is doing a year's best romances roundup in their big holiday coverage. And I got to write that. So we're here to tell you all about that.
That's so awesome. Do you still get like a little like tingly thrill every time you say I'm the romance columnist for the New York Times Book Review?
Yeah, I do.
Like little butterflies are rubbed like, this is still great.
Yeah, it's this, this job did not exist back when I was reading the book review,
Nope.
As a bookseller. Because my association with the New York Times Book Review was working the late shift at a bookstore, and the register would get quiet, and you'd entered all your catalogs and you'd tidied everything up, and then you were allowed to read the book review to keep tabs on what was being reviewed, because inevitably somebody would be asking about one or more of those books.
And they would come in and be like, I think I read about this in a newspaper, and the cover was like kind of green, and you'll be like, oh, this one in the Times Review, I just read it. Yeah, something about a bank.
Yeah. And I love being the person to solve those puzzles. And let me tell you, when you can solve the really vague ones, people get so impressed. It's very fun.
It's like magic.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
we do that. We do that with Help a Bitch Out, and people are like, I can't believe you figured that out.
that's still one of my favorite things to see. Like every time that comes up, I'm like, I roll my sleeves up and I almost never get them because they're like wildly obscure.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. They're hard to get sometimes. Sometimes I get one in my email and I'm like, oh, I know this one immediately. I feel like I won. Like I won something.
Yes. It is. It's that very Jeopardy champion feeling.
Oh, 100% Jeopardy champion, which I'm never going to be. So tell me about the column. How is it going? And what are some of the things you're talking about?
Oh, it's been really fun. It's been a wonderful coincidence that my tenure at this column has overlapped with a real surge in queer romance specifically.
Yeah.
Because it feels like there's more of that now than we've ever had.
There absolutely is.
And it's like we have like multiple types of queer romance. We have bi romance, we have we have sapphic romance, we have queer Black romance coming out from traditional publishing, which has been like like you have to go all the way back to like Anne Ellen Shockley to get that earlier. But now we have Devon and Chris from Chensia Higgins. We've got Alyssa Coles, like that was Avon's first FF romance in forever. And then there's been so many more afterwards. You've got Meryl Wilsner, you've got Alexandria Belfleur, we've got various couples and groups, and Casey McQuiston's like kind of opened a lot of doors for people, and it's just been spectacular. And so writing this, the hardest part of the column is trying to pick which books.
Always.
Because there's always so many more books than I can possibly not only feature, but like get to as a reader.
Yep. It's absolutely true. So what are some of the books that you have covered this year that you think are the best of the year? What are your top books this year?
Well, I think my number one favorite for me has been The Dead Romantics. Speaking of like paranormal stuff, because I love ghost romance. And it's been a really good year for it. Like Teresa Bihari has one out, but The Dead Romantics for me was both a really solid swoony romance, gorgeously written, and it had such a sharp and up to the minute view on publishing.
Yes.
That I couldn't resist it. Like there were more current romance novel names dropped in that book than I've ever seen.
This was written by someone who is deeply fluent, not only in romance, but forgive me, all of the bullshit behind the scenes of producing romance. I was like, oh, yes. Wow, this is somebody on the inside. This is very gossipy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
This is like royal insider tea, but publishing.
This is not somebody who likes being a writer, writing about how great it is being a writer. This is like somebody who knows how the sausage is made saying this is disgusting, but we have to do it.
Yep. And it was so very grounded in very specific things about the industry where I was like, oh yeah, that's right. And then, ghosts on top of that.
Yes.
Absolutely. I accept all of this.
Well, and like, the whole ghost writer starts seeing ghosts things. You can see how it would start as a joke and then she treated it so seriously.
Yeah.
And that's possibly my favorite thing is something that starts as a joke that you treat with utmost like seriousness.
If you walk up to somebody and say, the ghostwriter can see ghosts, people are like, what?
And then you make the sentences beautiful and nobody can resist. It reminded me a little bit of Rebecca Weatherspoon's, it's the first of her Rancher series. The title is not coming to me, but it's the one with the amnesia. Yeah, she did like a very serious, very realistic take on amnesia for her Cowboy series. A Cowboy to Remember. That's the one. The heroine has a head injury and she forgets like everything. Like, and it's not comfortable. Like she has to relearn basic, like a lot of like basic motor skills. She doesn't remember what she does for a living. Like it's devastating and it's complicated and she's prone to headaches and she needs a long recovery time. It's not like pretty jokey comedy and it's like amnesia. It's like, we're going to check you for concussion every hour amnesia.
Yeah, it's head trauma, chronic illness, amnesia.
Yes.
Not, wouldn't it be great to just forget things for a while, amnesia.
Yeah.
That's an excellent choice. What else you got?
Tanked, Mia Hopkins. I don't know if you've been reading Mia Hopkins's like series, the East Side Brewery series.
Tell me everything.
Contemporary.
Right.
3 brothers. They have a brewery. The eldest 2 have like criminal pasts. They're like ex-cons. They've been raised extremely rough. I don't normally go for like the dark mafia romance and the gritty romance. So this is not that. This is incredibly straightforward, grounded, realistic stories about people in very hard financial circumstances with very difficult obstacles like in their past. This recent one, Tanked, is like the youngest brother's story, and he was never in prison. He got shipped off to relatives when his brothers were sent away. And so he's kind of trying to reintegrate to the family.
Yeah.
To survive, he became he was an underground fighter, like in a lot of illegal fights. And so he has a very shady relationship with the law. And he ends up falling for this social worker who's just lost her job. And her job, she's actually one of the brothers' former caseworker.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And they end up having like a connection because he's super hot and super into her, and she's in the terrible place, and they end up bonding. And it's beautiful. I mean, all of Mia Hopkins' work is so gorgeous. The second one is entirely from the hero's point of view as well, which is like extremely rare in contemporary romance. And she just like, her heroes are these big, tough, beautiful men with these incredibly nuanced, tender characterizations, and it's irresistible to me.
Yep.
Like, that combination, they pine so lovingly, and the sex scenes are gorgeous.
That's always good.
Yes. But one of the things I really appreciated about Tanked was it actually dealt with the world as it is. It put COVID right on the page. Like, people were wearing masks. People had to test. At one point, secondary characters came down with COVID, and everybody was very worried and left groceries on their doorstep. And it was just presented as part of the world as it is now. And I know I have a hard time with a lot of contemporary romance because they're pretending to be in this eternal present where COVID doesn't exist. That worked okay in the first year of the pandemic.
Yeah. It's such an interesting question, right? Like, is there COVID in the book? And do you want to read a world with COVID in it, or is that not something you can do? It's good to have choices, but I am always fascinated by the sort of not honesty, because it's not as if the Eternal Sunshine contemporaries aren't honest. They're honest about what they're doing. It's more a frankness. And yeah,
I use the word brave about it.
Yeah, like that also works. Absolutely.
Yeah, this world has something terrible happening. We can have happiness anyway.
Yeah. Which fits romance. We've done that a lot.
Yes. Pretty much all the time.
Pretty much all the time.
Yeah, like, I mean, do you remember that rash of like COVID as gimmick books that came out at the start of the pandemic?
Yeah. Oh, we're stuck in the bus station together, and no, I couldn't. I couldn't. It was too present and too scary, and not a cute situation.
No, and those felt really cheap and facile.
Twee,
exactly. And this is the opposite of that. And unfortunately, I'm getting to a point where if I don't see any reference to COVID on the page, I start to get anxious. Yeah. Like, it's like reading Red, White, and Royal Blue right after the election. It poked a sore spot.
Yes, absolutely. It pushes on your bruise. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I remember the same thing happening after 9/11.
Oh, definitely.
Do you make 9/11 part of this? Because that was a big change. That was a very, very big cultural shift and political. It was huge. It had a lot of effect. So the idea of incorporating 9/11, it's a big question. It's hard. It's not easy to do, but I've seen books that like invoke that particular shift in the world in ways that are thoughtful and nuanced and interesting. It's really hard to do, but when it's done well, it is truly incredible.
It is. It feels very healing when somebody gets it to work.
Yes, that's exactly it. It's like it's acknowledging all of the painful feelings and then giving them a resolution.
And I think that's one of the things that I love about romance is when somebody, and I always come back to romances that are about grief because I'm very interested in grief, and probably never more so than right now.
Oh, yeah.
When romances really address grief, it is so cathartic.
Oh, yes.
But you have to do it responsibly. Like, I think a lot of the popularity of Colleen Hoover is because it feels like she's addressing grief, but really what she's doing is using grief as a little puppet to like tug at you.
Yeah.
And that's not the same thing as actually exploring it.
It's not it's not doing active work all through the plot. It's addressing.
Right. And even if you're treating grief in like a potboiler way, like Sonali Dev always has like this wealth of tragic backstory in this very like Bollywood tearjerker kind of way. But it feels like that's organic to the story that she's telling. And then sometimes I'm like, I personally cannot do this right now. But it feels like she's I don't know. It feels like her story structures make sense, but with Colleen Hoover, I'm just like, again, it feels like somebody poking you with a sharp stick just to get you to react.
I understand why it is popular. I also know that it is not for me.
Yeah. And it does feel like this is the first time with Colleen Hoover. It feels like this is the first time where there's a generational split in the readership, and I'm on the side of the olds.
Yes. Oh my gosh, me too. I'm like, do I need to just get my rocking chair and park my ass on the porch of Romancelandia? Is that where I am now? Okay.
Yeah, and maybe it's easier to think of it as something like E.L. James or Stephanie Meyer, where they came in and were hugely popular and then kind of vanish. Because that's something that happens with really popular fiction. Like, you look at the bestsellers of years past, and people don't read them, and people don't teach them.
No.
They're just like all of these names that were hugely famous, and then just poof, they're gone.
You remember when all of the thrift stores got piles and piles and piles of copies of 50 Shades of Grey?
Yep.
Yeah, same thing's going to happen. I also think that with Hoover, there's also the question of the pool of emotional experience. So my theory is that young people, I have teenagers, so I think about this a lot. Young people have small pools of emotional experience because they've been alive that long. I'm 30 and 32 years older than my children, so my pool of emotional experience is very large. So if you drop a rock in a lake, it's like, all right, little waves, and that's fine, no big deal. If you drop a rock in a little tiny puddle, it's like kaboom, and all the water's gone. So when you have a small pool of emotional experience, it doesn't take much to make a massive emotional impact. And so with Hoover, she is using big rocks in a small pool of emotional experience, and that readership is completely overwhelmed by the incredible catharsis of having their feelings recognized and validated, and then having this sort of experience of, expunging all of that pain and grief and sadness. They get to do that work through the book. And I have read books like that. I've absolutely done that myself. But now my pool is so big, this rock is not going to do much emotional work for me.
I think that's a perfect encapsulation of it. I do think that this is a stage that readers and even people tend to go through. Like, you have to in order to learn, but there's sometimes where you stumble into a book when you're too young for it and you like it, but then later you grow to like it in different ways and in better ways.
Yep.
And I think that's kind of always what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
As opposed to here's a little soap bubble. I mean, on the one hand, it's like, if you have the right fling at the right time and that's all you need, that's great.
Absolutely.
But I'm always kind of looking for the love affair, for like the love of my life.
Oh yeah.
Reading wise.
Oh yeah. Me too.
But yeah.
Absolutely. And I remember going through something similar when the movie Titanic came out. Do you remember when Titanic came out and people were friggin' obsessed with it?
Look, I was in high school when Titanic came out, and I remember very clearly sitting in the living room at the house I grew up in with the Celine Dion song on endless repeat. And it would have been a CD by then. Even though we had a record player, it would have been a CD. We did not have that on vinyl. God help me. Did they put Titanic on vinyl? I have to go check. Just listening to that tragic song over and over and over in a loop and sobbing.
Yes. And the vinyl is pink, by the way.
Oh my God. That's amazing.
Yeah. The vinyl is limited edition of 1,000 individually numbered copies on translucent pink vinyl.
Translucent pink vinyl. Oh, what a nice touch.
Yep.
Well, now I wish I'd sprung for the vinyl at the time.
But I remember people were obsessed with it. I remember listening to, because I would have just graduated college.
Yeah.
I remember like radio DJs just devoting whole segments to talking about all the things they were learning about Titanic. It was like everyone went to read the Titanic Wikipedia and we all grieved over these people. And it was very easy to locate all of your big feelings on this movie. And then, add some Penny Whistle and Celine Dion, and that's it. We're done. That's all we need. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you have giant jewelry. You have the cool science of finding the shipwreck, which was real. Like, I'd been a Titanic nerd for a lot of years before then because they kept sending exhibits around, and it's a cool story, and it's this big, and like, I remember the day when they actually found the wreck.
Yes. Oh my gosh, me too.
They had the fancy little submarine that went in, Alvin, and everybody loved Alvin like the way they love the Mars rovers now.
Yep. Absolutely. Do you know that there is a very silly sort of send up of the nonfiction narrative podcast called Did the Titanic Really Sink?
No.
And one there and the people who do it are Scottish, I'm sorry to report.
Oh my gosh, that sounds amazing.
So let me find, yes, did Titanic sink? It is kind of a parody and kind of a send up of a lot of, historical investigation and conspiracy theory podcasts. Yes. It's like, so if you've ever listened to the Renner Files, which was a true crimes. Okay. I listened to it in the car with my husband. I think it's 6 episodes. We were driving from DC up to JFK because our flight out of New York, and we listened to it in the car. And there was a point where I really thought we were going to have to pull over because we were laughing so hard. It is a true crime sort of investigative report into the Jeremy Renner app. Why did Jeremy Renner have an app? But it's like,
I've read the article that's based on. It's magnificent.
The whole podcast is hilarious. And it does all of those things like fresh air and all of the investigation. Do you know why? I don't know why, but we did this. And there's all of these intros and the very tense but melodic music. It's a perfect send up. And Did Titanic Sink is similar in that way. And it's like, you've pinpointed a nerd area that I didn't know I had. Thank you. But that was the same thing for me. I'm grieving over and it was 1997. I just looked it up. So it was actually the year I graduated college. It was before 9/11. I could grieve for rich white people. I had no problem with that. I couldn't do that now. My brain is a completely different landscape.
Well, and they gave you the out, right? Like Kate Winslet was a rich white person, but she hated her douchey fiance, Billy Zane,
who was an abusive
and then became not a rich white person at the end and sympathized with the steerage people. So it's like, I get to feel progressive for doing it.
Yep, very window dressing.
Get, like the costumes and the jewelry and the hot young Leonardo DiCaprio in his floppiest hair days.
Oh my God. Between that and Romeo and Juliet, it was epic 90s hair flop.
God, I love Romeo and Juliet. That actually, that version, the Baz Luhrmann holds up so well. It's so beautifully done.
It's so
good.
But even
I love it.
That was a movie where I could locate my emotions.
Yes.
Right? Even that
the
was
whole fish tank scene.
Yes, pining and yearning and all of that. Absolutely. And Claire Danes was coming out of my so-called life, like that angsty, yearning, difficult, tricky, emotional. Being a teen is hard. So now I look at that and I think, all right, I understand the Hoover fandom. This is not for me. This is not my emotional jam, but I get it. I've been there.
The kids need this.
Yes, this will happen again. Twilight was the same thing.
Yeah.
And Twilight was all about the secret world of what you do that your parents don't know about and secretly becoming an adult and coming of age. And maybe a werewolf will imprint on your ovary. That will happen. It's okay.
Oh my God. Right. Oh, the baby. Oh God, no. Oh my gosh. do you watch What We Do in the Shadows?
I have not seen all of it. What's happening? Please don't tell me there's a character named Renesmee.
No. But they do deal with vampires raising a baby in the later seasons.
Oh
no, it's amazing. If you haven't gotten there, I'm not going to spoil anything. But
okay. It's on my watch list.
If you started the series, you got to keep going because eventually you get to Jackie Daytona, and I love Matt Berry so much. But I have to admit, my favorite vampire is Colin Robinson. He's awful, and I love him so much. He's the one that made me fall in love with the series. I love them all dearly, and Matt Berry can get it. My God, what a hunk. But Colin Robinson was the one where in the pilot I started laughing so hard I cried.
Oh yeah.
And yeah. So they're definitely playing with that, and they've got werewolves at one point. At one point they actually do play I think it's kickball. The werewolves and the vampires play kickball in the snow in New York and in Staten Island. Oh, spectacular.
Amazing. But even Twilight was the emotional obsession of its time.
Yes, but Twilight also spawned really great series of essays and insightful blog posts and people talking about this in really interesting ways. Yes, Bella is a complete wet blanket of a heroine, but also the narrative is designed to give Bella everything she wants, even if Edward doesn't think she should have it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm ooh, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's absolutely a fulfillment fantasy. Did you read Season of Love by Helena Greer?
I have not.
Okay. All right. So, you need to read it. It is so charming. It is so good. It is so thoughtful. There are so many pop culture references, but it is a social media artist influencer named Miriam finds out that she has inherited a share of a Christmas tree farm from her great aunt. All of her family and all of the people who work there are Jewish, but they own
the Christmas tree farm.
A Christmas tree farm in the town of Advent, New York, which just like hoses itself down with Christmas every year. And they are just, my favorite thing was it was really capturing the feeling of being Jewish at Christmas when everything is Christmas. Like literally I can buy Jesus at Costco right now. He's in aisle 3 with like 2 different nativity scenes. I can purchase Jesus at Costco right now. And yet they are just very quietly, determinedly Jewish, and they do all their Jewish things, and the timekeeping of the story follows the Jewish holidays.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Miriam,
I do need to read that. That sounds like just the thing this year.
Miriam meets the person who maintains the trees, the keyword being lumberjack. Her name is Noelle. Her name is Noelle. And she is literally described as a fat butch. And they are so into each other. And it takes all of those familiar
wonderful.
Hallmark. This is one of those books where you know that the writer is extremely fluent in the beats of Hallmark Christmas movies and also Christmas romances, because all of those beats are there and immediately subverted. Like Miriam is engaged to somebody and her fiance is this incredibly wealthy Southern blonde woman. And you think, oh, Ice Queen. Well, kind of.
Well, yes and no.
Yes and no.
Yeah.
But there are
That
some
sounds
parts
perfect.
that are so good, and it's so charming. I can't tell you how charming it is. And then I'm trying to find a quote because this is my favorite part, and I'm gonna okay. So this is later on. They're going for a sleigh ride because, like I said, Christmas Hallmark beats, right?
Mm-hmm.
Noelle is asking her questions to get to know her. You're bi. What does that mean to you? There's no universal, this is what bisexuality looks like. What is it for you? You don't date men, it doesn't seem like. Miriam, I mean, not to get too deep into queer theory, that is the sexiest thing anyone's ever said to me, Noelle interrupted. So they're aware of themselves in a way that is going to make you very happy.
Oh yeah, that's going immediately next on my list, because let me tell you, one of my big plans for this coming weekend is I'm going to wallow in all of the Christmas stuff that I can. I'm going to watch While You Were Sleeping. I'm going to watch this new musical Christmas Carol with Ryan Reynolds and Will Ferrell.
Oh, hello.
Yeah, like it's basically they're redoing Scrooged, but it's a musical starring Ryan Reynolds and Will Ferrell and Octavia Spencer for some reason.
Wow. Okay, amazing. This sounds like an
I'm just
excellent
like,
plan.
you know what? Sold. I want to see Will Ferrell make jokes about Tiny Tim. Like,
yes, you do.
Yeah, specifically about not remembering Tiny Tim's name, and I don't know why that made me cry laugh, but it really did.
You will love.
Season of Love is in there.
Season of Love. I have
calendar stuff.
bought it for people. I have told all my reviewers about it. I did an interview with Helena and her editor because this was also her editor's first acquisition at Hachette as an assistant editor, and it is just such a perfect holiday confection that acknowledges Judaism and being marginalized and being queer and being bisexual and all of the, and there's a lot of
so much more of that at this. And
yes.
I want those good feelings. I want we were watching Jeopardy yesterday. That's like the one TV show we keep up with, but they had a commercial that I'd seen like 100 times, and it's this family and the dad and the daughter keep pretending they're going to the playground, but they're really going to play games at Best Buy. Yeah. And so the mom surprises them with a console at the end, like, haha, I'm on to you this whole time. But it's on like the third or fourth repeat that I realized everything in their house is blue and silver, and they have a menorah in the window. And it's just this casual acknowledgement that Jewish families exist.
Yep.
And I'm like, hey, look at this.
Look at that. Yep.
This is amazing. And it's just, and of course, the candles make everything so glowy and beautiful. And and it was so nice. And, yeah, especially at this time of year, it can be really, it can be really hard. Like, I love A Christmas Carol and I love A Christmas, story, but especially ones, speaking of ghost romance, ghost Christmas books are like my catnip.
Oh, they're so good.
But it's always so nice to see like the other side of that experience. This can actually be really isolating. This can be really lonely. How do we deal with that on the page?
Yeah.
I mentioned Rose Lerner's Sailor's Delight, and one of my very favorite things about it so far, every chapter opens with the date on the calendar, the date on the Jewish calendar, and the wardroom toast for that day of the week.
As you do.
As you do.
As you do.
Well, because it's about, like a Navy man. And so they do the wardroom toast. And that's actually something that, when the pandemic started and everybody was really into sea shanties, and we all knew why, Mr. Waite and I started to do the wardroom toasts every day, just between the two of us in our little, old house that creaks like a ship when it's windy. And when I met him, he was on a sailboat and he was a captain. And so, this became kind of our pandemic ritual, just the two of us casually toasting absent friends on, I want to say Sundays.
That's adorable.
Yeah.
I love that.
And so to see those crop up in we actually I designed a poster in Canva and we printed it up to put above the bars. So we always have an easy reference for what day is what.
That's adorable. Will you send me a picture?
Yeah. Yes.
Awesome. All right. Do you have any additional books that you would like to mention?
I do. Yes. Ooh, Ocean's Echo. People need to know that Ocean's Echo is great. But the other one that I want to talk about is The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches.
Oh, such a charming, charming ass book. And again, a little bit of grief too. Yeah.
And I almost put it down in the beginning because I'm like, is this too sugary? Because the house was so pretty. And then I'm like, but the writing's good, but I just, but
it gets so close to twee, right? It gets so close.
It goes
to
right
twee.
up against it. And then the garden. And I'm like, what?
Yes. Oh my God.
I started yelling and I'm like, oh my God, this is not something I expected. And it wasn't like a twist.
Yeah.
But
it was a big secret.
It was a note I did not expect. And I instantly loved it.
Yep.
Could not stop. And then the ending was just a slam bang of a finish.
I did not see either part coming. I didn't see it coming. And I was like, wow. I love being surprised. This is so great.
It's the kind of book you just want to get a stack and start chucking them at people on street corners and just going, just read this.
This is going to make you so happy. Just trust me.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Just keep pushing. I know. It's super cute in the beginning. Keep going.
It's one of the absolute best books I've read this year. No question.
Yeah. And I think I'm hoping it's going to be one of those sleeper hits that keeps coming up year after year.
Yeah.
Which are never the ones we talk about at the time.
Nope.
Staying power is always an interesting.
Yeah. What endures is very cool.
Yeah. So that and Ocean's Echo, just because, oh man, military science fiction, psychics, force bonded, everything you want about the Vorkosigan character forward sci-fi romancy type stuff with some of the poetry of This Is How You Lose the Time War. All the descriptions of when their minds are meeting and loved it. Absolutely loved it.
That's awesome. Where can people find you if you wish to be found?
Well, assuming Twitter exists, I do still spend a lot of time on Twitter, but the best bet is my website, which is oliviawaite.com. And even better, I'm actually being more regular about sending out the newsletter. Which is
very good.
Yes. Which has been really, really actually quite fun. And I usually send out links that I found from other places. Your Discord is actually one of the places where I'm like, ooh, this link's going in the newsletter. But
I'm so glad. It's such a lovely Discord. I was very nervous about setting it up because I was like, I don't want another thing to moderate. I already moderate a bunch of things. But this is such a welcoming, chill, warm.
It's very chill.
Fun community.
It's so nice.
Let's find books and share links and look at our pets. And it's oh, perfect.
Yeah, it's pets and crafting. And here's a TV show I'm enjoying. And I'm like, yes, this is what I want.
Yep.
Exactly.
I'm so happy that it has become what it is.
Yeah.
So
And
thank you.
it's really wonderful. It's a wonderful, wonderful space.
I'm so happy about it. Thank you.
Oh yeah. So those links go in the newsletter. It's like artsy things, research stuff I find. There's there's a section for crafts on what I'm making. There's a list of recommended reads. So I always put the column in there now that that's monthly, which, oh my God. But so there's books I'm reading, books I've put in the column, all that stuff, little snippets of poetry that I found, like, ooh, hey, this poem came across my timeline. It's a really fun newsletter, and I love doing it.
And that brings us to the end of this week's episode. Thank you to Olivia for hanging out with me late last year. I'm curious, what was one of your favorite books of 2022? Is there a book you're still thinking about, even though we're, heading into second quarter? Tell me. I'm always looking for recommendations. And I will, of course, link to all of the podcasts and movies and episodes and books. So many books. This was a really long book list for this episode in the show notes. And you know where that is, right? smartbitches.trashybooks.com/podcast. As always, I end with a terrible joke, and this week's joke comes from Clay's 9-year-old. Thank you, Clay. Thank you, Clay's 9-year-old. Are you ready? Why do bees have sticky hair? Why do bees have sticky hair? Because they use honeycombs. I don't know if you remember or watched Phineas and Ferb, but there was one scene where a character says as like a throwaway line, stickiness is the most underestimated of all the nesses. And I completely believe that is true. Stickiness is absolutely the most underestimated of all the nesses. On behalf of everyone here, we wish you the very best of reading. Have a wonderful weekend, and we will see you back here next week. Smart Podcast Trashy Books is part of the Frolic Podcast Network. You can find outstanding podcasts to subscribe to at frolic.media/podcasts.